Welcome back to the Home Service Expert. Today I got Justin Hatcher in the house. Not really, he's in Scottsdale, but I'm in Phoenix. He's an expert in sales, business, and financing. He's based out of Appleton. He's the president of One & Fund. Justin is the president and visionary behind One & Fund, where he helps home improvement dealers close more and bigger projects through smarter financing. With over 20 years in the home improvement and financial industries, Justin has a deep expertise in building, managing, and scaling high-performance sales and consumer financing programs. A former member of Renewal by Andersen Finance Council and the Big 12 Finance Council, he helped Tunderland grow from $25 million to over $125 million in annual sales by financing 65% of the projects. Now leading One & Fund's innovative patent-pending One-Look platform, Justin is redefining how contractors sell, scale, and win. Pleasure to have you on, Justin.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, Tommy.
I'm excited, man. Why don't you just kick us off with telling us a little bit about you, your upbringing, how you got involved with home improvement, and what you're looking forward to?
Yeah. So I am from Minnesota originally, and I did not want to go to college because I figured it wasn't the life for me. So I was going to get into radio broadcasting and got accepted to school. I actually had an internship at a big radio station. And then I started siding houses in the summer for one of my brother's buddies. And I was making like $15 an hour cash. And I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. So I decided not to go to radio broadcasting school because I didn't want to get sent to like Topeka, Kansas or somewhere like that. Not that there's anything wrong with Topeka, but just I didn't want to go to a smaller market. So I decided to stay with siding houses. And I lasted one winter. And I realized that installing in the wintertime is not my future. So that led me into selling home improvements. I was like 19 or 20 at the time. Fell in love with sitting in front of Mr. and Mrs. Jones. Sold $1 million, back in the early 2000s. And I did that for several years, which led me to the mortgage business. Because the reason it led me to the mortgage business is how we financed projects back in the day. There was like one unsecured lender. Otherwise, I used to be like, okay, Tommy, let's get this project done. Help me understand what you're paying for this, what you're paying for that. What we're going to do is we're going to roll everything into one mortgage, and we're going to refinance your house and lower your monthly payments and get this project done. So I was selling mortgages without realizing I was selling mortgages. So that's what led me to actually get in the mortgage business. But I kept on missing the home improvement space. I always wanted to go back. And then when my beautiful bride dragged me from Minneapolis to Oshkosh, Wisconsin, it led me to Renewal by Andersen Windows. So I started selling in the home again, which led me to a guy by the name of Brian Gottlieb, who I know you've had on this show before.
Good buddy. Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, Brian's awesome, man. So I ran his financing. So I was in charge of training sales reps how to offer financing at the point of sale, negotiating with lenders, to helping customers. I had my sales reps only run financing option in the house. And then my team would take that over and chase second look and get those deals done, talk to Mr. and Mrs. Jones over the phone and chase them down. Fast forward to when Brian started to sell his businesses, I stayed on with one of the acquisitions and then also had a side hustle where I had deals with a lender. And then I have a lot of friends in this space. So I had negotiated rates and programs for my friends and network. And my wife and I quickly realized, hey, we have a business here. We scaled it really fast and really quickly. What our blind spot was, we realized we couldn't rely on one lender. And so once that lender was acquired by a bank and they actually shut down that program, we sat back and said, all right, we have a business. Well, we just don't have a perfect business model. So then we sold that business to create One & Fund. So we have a platform where lenders live on, and we can actually dictate the terms with the lenders and just create that level playing field so contractors can win more than the lenders can.
And that
led me to where we are today.
So what One & Fund is, how many finance oars are involved with One & Fund?
Yeah, good question. So today we have 7 lenders live today, and then we have 4 lenders that we're currently integrating with on top of that.
I love that. We're going to talk about a lot more about that. But before One & Fund, you were part of some very high-performing organizations, Renewal by Andersen, Leaf Fitter, Tunderland. What patterns did you notice in how top-performing teams use financing differently from the average companies?
Yeah. 65 to 70% of their jobs are being financed, right? I worked for some smaller companies prior to that, and they almost fell into financing without even trying, or they would present price and all of a sudden like, oh, but we have these great financing options. So what I saw these top organizations do is they wove it into their sales presentation, right? So starting from their marketing of, hey, we have no payments until XYZ or payments as low as, so all that did is it set up their sales reps how to have those conversations in the home. So that way, through that entire process, you could drop these seeds to the consumer of, hey, finance this or payments here, so it really set them up.
What is there like a magic number? I've always thought like garage door prices went through the roof during COVID. And I felt like after $5,000 was when people started to consider more like, I'm not going to put it on a credit card. I'd rather just. And when I talked to Mark that we just talked about earlier, he's like, listen, if you could keep it under $145, most people take a 10-year loan and they pay it off in 2.5 years. He goes, they just want to know they could afford it for a rainy day. Christmas is whatever it might be. Most people tend to pay it off a lot earlier than the loan lasts. Is there like a number that you find that's like people definitely choose to finance?
Yeah, I think it's all about how the conversation's set up, right? When I was selling leaf filter, my average ticket was like $4,100, but I financed 90% of those projects. So it's, if you look at today, the average person maybe has $4 or $5 grand in their bank account at the moment and their savings, so I think that 4 to 5 is kind of when that conversation starts, but if it's a situation where, you can easily write a check for $5,000 for new gutters, right, Tommy? But if I could tell you that you could keep that in your bank account for a year and you could make 10, 15% on that money in your bank account, wouldn't you rather use financing and take advantage of a 0% versus giving me the money today to get that project done now?
Now, what's the plan on that? Because you're obviously paying dealer fees. So if someone wanted to pay a check, what's the advantage of doing financing other than usually the ticket average is higher because you're using other people's money?
Yeah, obviously that's directed towards the contractor, right? So what's the advantage? My take on this is this. I like frictionless ways for customers to pay. So how we did it is our average cost of the average plan that we would allow our reps to have was 8%. And then we looked at what our average cost for credit cards, which is just call it 3%. And we looked at the percentages and we took about 15% of our projects were credit cards. 60 of it was financing. So we did an average. It was like 4.5 points. So what we did is we just took a 5% price increase. So no matter how you paid for that project, however that consumer pays for it, whether it's a check, credit card, or financing, it's all the same price. And it's a net positive to you, right? So it's actually not costing you anything if you bill it out that way.
Yeah.
Just take a price increase.
So when you helped take Tunderland from $25 million to over $125 million in annual sales, it was largely because you weaved financing into the DNA of the sales process. What were the early lessons that you learned that shaped how you kind of built that process?
I think Brian's been on here and he said, if you're going to be wrong, don't be long for wrong. Don't be long for wrong, right? It was just, we were a really well-oiled machine, like as a leadership team. So we had, daily check-ins with each other and we were like, okay, how's this marketing working? How's this working? How's sales working? The lenders performing the way they should be. So we were constantly checking up on all of our KPIs that we had set. So that way we could always hit those. And I think the other thing is, we weren't thinking like a $25 million company when I started. We were thinking like we were a $50 million company. So we were always thinking we were bigger than we were so we could scale towards that versus, every home improvement company flies by the seat of their pants. Some just do it better, right?
Yeah. No, I think about Leaf Fitter. I see their commercials probably 6 or 7 times a day. It's crazy. And I'm like, how many people need a leaf guard. Like, I mean, they're good commercials. And they remind me of Anderson's commercials. And that's something that you don't need. It's something that it's like something that you might want, right? It obviously could save you money in the long run. It makes less leaks happen, and it saves your roof. But what do you think? Is it mostly TV that they're doing? What is the marketing play for some of these large home improvement? Because I don't know if you want to talk about this, but Renovo just shut their doors, and that was a BlackRock company, and I just wonder, that was a big thing, and I know I'm kind of bobbing and weaving here to bring that up, but
Yeah.
But what do you want to chat about with that?
It's interesting. So when I was in that Big 12 group, a lot of those Renovo companies were also in the Big 12. So they were all friends of mine. And I think my take on it was, I guess if we step back and look at it, private equity, they understand how to run a business. They understand how to run a P&L. I think where their biggest area of opportunity is when it comes to these home improvement companies that they're buying, what they don't understand is how to weave culture into the business, and they don't understand how important the culture of that business is to make your team want to strive, right? I mean, and they also run everything off of 1 month's P&L, which unfortunately you're going to have bad months in home improvement, but you can't go fire a bunch of people because you didn't hit quota that month, right? So I feel right? I mean, you see that all the time, I imagine.
Well, Tony Hody had emailed or Facebook messaged me, and he's like, these young kids and their spreadsheets. That has nothing to do with the culture of a business, and there is going to be highs and lows, and you got to remember the people come first. If your net promoter score internally is probably the most important thing. Brian would agree, and I think you'd probably agree. And I think it's just so easy to say we're going to cut our way to the top, and we're going to fire, and we're going to top grade. But this is a weird time. I mean, the economy, I think, is headed in the right direction, but you got to be able to withstand good years and bad years. I mean, COVID was the best thing that ever happened when everybody was stuck at home doing good stuff to their house, at least for home improvement and home service. It's very interesting. There's so many great stories about private equity, and there's a lot of not so good stories. What do you think makes a great PE company to partner up with?
I think there's a couple things. You have to interview them just like they're interviewing you. I think that's the thing, right? Just because, as as an owner of a business, I probably get 30 inquiries a day about somebody who wants to buy my business, right? And as a curious individual, I've actually taken some of those calls, and it's a bunch of waste your time, right? But to be more specific with your question, I mean, I think they have to align with what your values are and what your business values are. And if you can align with that, that's going to make a good partner. I mean, I think a lot of people struggle with, if you do take money from private equity, it depends on how much you're taking, for one, as far as a percentage of your business, and how much you're willing to have somebody else have a say in your business too, right? I mean, if you have majority ownership, yes, you still need to measure up to the KPIs because they give you money. But I mean, I think it just depends on how much you want to have ownership and say in that.
Yeah, I hope that if you're the CEO and founder, one of the things I've learned is the PE companies are getting smarter and making sure the founder is staying on and still stays motivated. The hard part for them is, they've got limited partners that they got to answer to every week. And, they're taking money from pension funds and different firemen and police officers and teachers and unions. And then, the hard part is you're giving somebody maybe $100 or $200 million, depending on the size of the company. And is the founder going to stay as motivated? And how old are they? What are their goals? What are their aspirations? How big is their family? Do they have grandchildren? Do they want to continue to sprint? And that's the hard part, I think, to make that from a PE perspective.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on, right? But the other thing with the private equity, it's not like most of them don't just have that cash sitting around. They're financing that debt to buy some of these businesses. So, I mean, it would explain why maybe they are so driven on like, this needs to hit, because they're living on a very small time frame themselves.
It's very hard when you got to if they borrow several $100 million to pay the founder, that puts a real constraint on the company because the company's got to put out that cash every quarter or every month to pay the lender. So I think if you were smart and you were talking to private equity, you say over-equitize the deal, meaning pay more cash. You'd want a partner that has the cash to fund the deal mostly without taking a massive amount of debt. With HVAC, they're able to take 6-7x EBITDA. And if they max that, then you're sitting there having to make these massive payments because you're super leveraged. And so I think that's a really good point, is how much cash are they borrowing versus putting in from the fund. And going into my next process, whenever that is, I'm going to make sure that that's like the partner I choose is going to be, a massive company that has the cash to be able to put most of it up. Because those first couple of years are so important because you want to go buy companies those first couple of years. You're a little bit more aggressive. But if you don't have money and you're making these large payments, it's kind of a bad situation to be in.
No, I agree. And I mean, going back to even if the founder stays on and that they don't stay on, I've definitely seen, I work with a lot of private equity groups, right? Some do it really well. Some are scattered, right? And they let all their groups kind of run by themselves and not trying to create that,
symmetry,
centralized process. Yeah, exactly. But the ones that I found successful are the ones that the founders have stayed on and they've kept that culture, but they've also, are open to that centralized process with the group that owns them.
I agree. Going back to Anderson and Leaf Fitter and, the other companies you've worked at, it's Tundraland. What are the best things they do for marketing? What are the things that you found to just be super effective? Obviously, I see the ton of TV. What other thing? I see Anderson, handwritten letters that are at every single event. I mean, those guys do a fantastic job. I mean, they're everywhere. But what works the best as far as marketing that you've seen that you would just, if you were going to start up a home improvement, these would be the critical things you would be doing no matter what?
Yeah. I mean, to that point, I'm actually at a one-day bath conference right now, and Jacuzzi's here, and they're explaining their product, and they have 150 different lead sources just for digital marketing, right? I mean, so, obviously the easy answer is digital. SEO is going to be what you need. If I were to start a new home improvement company today, I would focus on the community and how I can weave my brand into those communities. And whether you're going to a cherry festival or a music festival, it doesn't matter, that I'm in that community and my brand and culture is weaved into the culture of the community. That's what I would do first.
And do you think TV, are you a big believer in radio and billboards or not really?
Not so much radio and billboards. Much like yourself, COVID was awesome and TV was, what really helped. A lot of what helped Tundraland's growth is everybody was at home. So, I mean, I'm always going to be partial to TV. I think with TV, what people need to think about is, yes, spend money on TV, but make sure that what spots you're running on with your TV, because if you run an ad where you don't have your call center open to take those calls, you just wasted a bunch of leads and a bunch of money, right?
What's the follow-up sequence like? I've done a couple roofing companies that are pretty world-renowned. I've done Jacuzzi, talk to the people that do the marketing over there. I mean, it is like speed to lead and just relentless. And it's like 90 days they're still calling daily. How much is too much? I was talking to the guys at Cortec, which is the PE company we work with. They're like, 25 times in a month, that's outrageous. But I'm like, that doesn't mean you're getting a hold of them every time. And there's email, text messaging, voicemail blast, there's letters. There's a lot of different ways. So you're hitting them from, you could do geofencing, you could do OTT. There's just so much you could do. It doesn't mean you're just calling, but that's one of the best ways is to get them on the phone. But how much is too much, and what have you noticed with the follow-up process in this type?
Yeah, there's definitely a fine line. I mean, it's almost to the point where either they're going to tell you to stop calling or they're going to do business with you. I think that's the fine line there. But I think of myself when I'm, I might get a wild hair and be like, hey, I really want this XYZ thing. Go online, fill out the lead form. And maybe once they start calling me, I'm not in the mood to have those conversations. Yeah, do I still want that or not? So, I mean, I think as myself as a consumer, and we're all consumers, sometimes I need that extra push, or if somebody's trying to sell me something, I'm like, hey, look, sometimes I'm hard to get a hold of and just busy. So it's okay to reach out to me. So I'm okay with basically until they tell you to stop calling or they move forward with you.
I like that. I like that a lot. So you said before that financing isn't just all about affordability. It's about access and confidence. Can you take us back to the moment when you realized that financing could actually become a sales strategy rather than a barrier to closing deals? I mean, what was the mind shift change?
Yeah. I think it's still a working shift in this industry. A lot of my friends who are finance managers for these large organizations, we always kind of joke and say we're the black sheep of the home improvement business, even though that we're one of the most important pieces for that. Everybody, there's always a focus on your call center has a script. Your sales team is very heavily scripted. Even your production teams are scripted. Your call center teams are. There's really not a script for financing. So it's really building that script into your current sales model, and it's not hard. There's really 4 things you need to do. It's market. It's talking about it before you go do anything else, right? So I would teach we teach this of like, oh, hey, Tommy, how'd you hear about us? Oh, Valpak? Great. Do me a favor. Grab that Valpak ad. And then they would grab that Valpak ad, be like, oh, that's our 20% off and our 12 months, no interest, no payments. Oh, our customers are really loving that right now. So that's a spot right there where you're not only telling them that other people are buying your service, but people are financing it. And then I would do my needs analysis and just, why am I here? What do you need? All those different questions, whatever your discovery questions are. And before I do the walk around, I'd be like, hey, Tommy, really quick, when people move forward with us in several different ways, some like to write a check, some like to maybe put on a credit card and finance some of it, and some like to fully finance. Which bucket do you think you'll fall into? And just pause for a second. And if they answer and start talking about financing, go for it. Like, have that conversation, because that means they're serious about the project and they're very interested in that. And then the 4th thing is just present financing to everybody, because you technically have to, because otherwise it's you're discriminating against people, right? So if you're offering financing to one, you must offer it to everybody. So that's really the process to do it. It's pretty simple.
And the average ticket goes up dramatically, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, like we work with all the different recording softwares like Rilla and Zero. And typically if you're offering somebody a payment option, your average ticket goes up by like 25%.
I love it.
I think in the home service space, it's actually like 200%. I mean, usually it might be a little bit smaller numbers for like HVAC or something, but it's massive.
For One and Fund, One Look platform, it simplifies the entire financing process into one soft pull multi-lender system. For a lot of people in this space, that innovation almost seems impossible. What did the development process look like, and what were the problems that you obsessed over solving?
I don't think we have enough time for that, but I used to work with a lot of different platforms. So being an old mortgage guy, I wanted to streamline that approval process. So that's why we do a soft credit check up front. So what we can do with that is that, let's say it's a prime customer. That's easy. It's going to go directly to that prime lender, get your approval in 30 seconds, But if you have a subprime customer that maybe they have some challenge credit, but they're still deserve your product, if you're thinking of like the traditional model of it going to lender A, B, C, and then D, not only is that a long time and just a really poor customer and rep experience, it leads to a bunch of FUD down the line, because they're going to receive a bunch of decline letters from all those different lenders. So we wanted to streamline that process, make a 600 FICO score feel like an 850 buyer. So we're going to go directly to that lender that's going to give them the highest approval. So that way, instead of the sales rep saying, oh, Tommy, this lender didn't take it, don't worry, I have another lender that can look at this. They're saying, congratulations, you're approved, right? So it just makes it just an easier conversation. It's going to convert a lot higher. We typically see about 12% higher conversion rates on finance deals because we're giving those approvals right at the point of sale. But to go back to the development question, it's actually a funny story. So when we were building this, we talked to a ton of different developers. My old neighbor, he used to he still does work at Amazon as in cybersecurity. So we were having beers one night and I'm telling him what we were going to do. He's like, "Oh, I can build that." And I'm like, "No, dude, we're really going to do this, right?" He's like, "No, I can." I'm like, "How about I hire you as a consultant and you can interview these tech platforms for me?" So we talked to a couple of them and he's like, "These guys suck. I will build it for you." And I'm like, "Once again, man, we're really going to do this. I need you to do it." And he's like, "I got it." So we start integrating our first two lenders. We have a go live date of January 1. So I'm at a concrete floor coating national sales conference because they picked us to be their financing partner. And I am selling the shit. Oh, can I don't know if I can
know you're
but
good.
anyways, I'm selling our platform. It can slice, dice. It can do everything. We sign up 50 of these dealers. We go live. They start submitting applications, and it doesn't work.
Oh boy!
we have to push everything on the back end manually. I'm taking these calls. Everybody's just feeling this stress. So I'm calling my buddy. I'm like, "Dude, this doesn't work. What are we going to do?" We resolve the situation. We end up hiring a full-time CTO. We had to rewrite some code, rewrite the platform, but now it works beautifully. I mean, there's obviously everything that comes up. We're always enhancing the product, but those first several months were very stressful, I'll say.
Well, I love the idea of it. Your goal is always to get the approval. And I used to talk to all the guys that were sitting on the back end of whether it was GoodLeap or Service Finance or Green Sky. And especially in HVAC, when it was a $20,000, $30,000 deal, they would figure out, is the wife there? There's the good thing about GoodLeap is they pull the best credit. They pull from all three bureaus. They take the best one. And they say, "Listen, what do they do for work? How long have they lived in the house?" They were basically underwriting it. They were figuring out a way to get to yes. And that takes time. And you don't want to do that with $4,000 or $5,000 deals. Yeah, if you got a big deal, you could see wanting to do that. But so your platform makes it simple.
It does. And we have support team, right? So we do have a chat bubble. It's actually not bots. It's actual chat bubble. So maybe they're in a situation the rep can calmly go on their computer, click the button, be like, "Hey, is there any other options with this?" And, our team can be like, "Hey, have you thought about flipping the two customers or flipping the two borrowers? Or, can they get a cosigner? Can they do this?" We're always coaching too, as far as if there is a decline, we have some micro messaging that pops up that says, "Hey, have you thought about getting a cosigner and or asking them if they can put half down, half upon completion?" Always trying to do whatever we can to save that deal.
Yeah, I think a lot of people need coaching on how to. I love the 4 steps. You got to get it in the marketing. That's something I need to do a better job of, and that's something I'm going to focus on this week. How do you?
Yeah, actually, one thing I want to just what you said. I mean, I was reading this or listening to this Brene Brown book, and she had a really interesting quote about this, software is not going to fix your problems, and it really resonated with me just because owning a software business and, we have these tools that can help a lot of people and a lot of, consumers and a lot of businesses out there. But if you're not willing to have the mindset of changing your process, software is not going to fix it. It's going to help, but it's a mindset shift of, "Hey, I need to stick to this process, understand this process, and commit to this process. And now this technology is going to make it go, I'm going to get tenfold out of this."
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, you use Rillo Voice or Zero. We created a pretty cool tool called FieldSpark that competes with them. But those tools don't work if you're not coaching and listening to the calls and highlighting the good stuff and really understanding how to coach using those tools. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. You could have the best CRM, but if you're not putting the data in correctly, there's just a service tank could be a lot to handle. And so we use Power BI to kind of digest all the data in a way that we could actually coach with it. How do you balance simplicity for contractors with the complexity of a multi-lender system?
Yeah, and our platform gets more complex every day. It all starts with just, when we first meet with a contractor, we're going to seek to understand, right? We want to understand their business, so we're going to do a deep dive into understanding, what lenders they use, what programs they use, what their strategy is for their marketing, what their strategy is to what their process is that's offering financing. So once we understand that, we can say, okay, here is what we recommend, whether that's using your current set of lenders or, hey, maybe these are some different lenders that you need to add to your stack. Wherever that situation is, it's not a one size fits all. It's very customizable into what's going to fit into their flow. All of us that work for this company, we're all ex-home improvement dudes, right? So we never want to come in and blow up your model. We want to be a complement to your model, so we can help guide you as much as you want us to, or, if you want to just say, hey, this is what I want, this is how this is going to flow, perfect. We can program it to be exactly that for you.
Yeah, I mean, the best companies on the planet are over that 70% financing. It's the number I always hear. Yeah. It's whether it's HVAC, roofing, home improvement, bathroom, remodels. It's a big spot that I feel like we're missing the boat. And it's a complete culture shift, because technicians tend to think if they don't have money, let's offer them financing. But the idea should be, like you said, everybody gets the wealthiest people in the world use other people's money. So everyone should get that opportunity.
Well, yeah. And, I would challenge your technicians and say, hey, have you ever bought anything on Amazon? Which we all know they have. But I mean, if you go on Amazon, you buy a $50 item, they're going to give you payment options, right? So, I mean, we're conditioned as consumers to make payments or to take advantage of these different things, right? So it's 100% of its mindset. I totally agree.
There's all kinds of mistakes when it comes to offering financing. If you were training a new home improvements salesperson today, what's the one mindset that you would teach them to win big?
Stay out of your own head trash would probably be number one. Just because you wouldn't do this or don't agree with what what they want to do. I mean, it's not your decision to help. It's your decision to help guide them. But if they want to make this decision to finance or do this or that, it's don't do that. Don't talk them out of it because you wouldn't do that. I think that'd be the number one thing I'd say. And follow the process, of course. But
yeah, it's so funny because I interview my technicians, the best guys, once a week, and it's always I shift around different people. And they say, "Man, I just follow the process," and I'm like, "Man, I need more than that. I need more than that." But it's true. Once the process is dialed in, it's like, and you got to be willing to have the hard conversations. You wanted us to come out here. You wanted your order to be safe. You wanted to make sure it's working every time you hit the button. So what do we need to do during your business? And a lot of people don't sit at the kitchen table and ask for the sale. They don't spend the time with both homeowners and really go through a really, really long, answer all the questions, ask great questions, be quiet when they're responding, and do show and tell. I mean, what's the guy's name that used to carry a GoPro? He used to sell gutters. Rodney Webb. You ever heard of Rodney Webb?
I've heard of Rodney Webb, yeah. I listened to a ton of his books back in the day when I was selling. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think you just need to sit down. When you did the merger between One and Fund and One Click Contractor, how did that come together?
Yeah, fast. I'll say that. So we were actually looking at doing a 3-way merger, which would have been insane if we had actually pulled that off. But so thankfully, the third company's board had some questions, and they were probably the one that didn't make the most sense anyways. So the two of us looked at our business. We're like, hey, we actually really complement each other really well. And I might have manifested this a while ago because I've been saying for a little while prior to the merger, hey, I really want to control that point of sale. So having the ability to estimate, do price presentation, contract, it just naturally fed into our financing platform. So we met January of last year. The 3-way fell apart, and then they're like, hey, we really like you guys. I really want to do this. And I had some reservations, and then we met with them. Valuations worked out really well. And my old business partner's an M&A attorney. So we did diligence in like 6 weeks I think it was like 5 weeks. So we closed that deal in 5, 6 weeks. So it was really, really fast. And there was a lot of excitement with the merger. So it started off great. And then we ran into some culture things, just like you do when you're merging two businesses together. And it was growing it was growing in the wrong direction. So, I pinged my team. I'm like, guys, we need to meet offsite as a leadership team. We need to align ourselves let's just look at 6 months down the road. And I want every leader of every department to figure out what their rock they're chasing for the next 6 months, rock or rocks. And we did that, and we aligned as a leadership team. And then they went back and got their team on what we're doing as a company. And then we held a meeting, everybody, and it was awesome. We've never been aligned as we ever have been.
That's great. It is tough. It's very tough when you're combining two pretty big companies. So you've been in the space over 2 decades. What personal philosophy has guided you through the ups and downs?
That's a really good question. I've always been really hard on myself, for one, right? And so keeping myself living to a certain standard that I want to be at, right? As far as whether it's, personally, professionally, the money I want to make. So living up to that, or setting those goals and living by them, that's always been number one. I've always been really good at, when things don't go my way, is looking at stepping back and looking at the situation, and, whether it's a me thing or somebody else thing, and just looking at it from every point of view. So that way I can make the right decision versus just making a quick decision that could cost me greater down the line. So that's been that's been massive. And I mean, don't get me wrong, that took me a while to get to that point, right? So
I love it. It's funny when I look at our business, it's getting to a larger size, and there's more money to be found because a fraction of a percent here and there is a big outcome. It's because we deal with so many clients. And there's so many things we could do. It's just ruthlessly prioritizing the initiatives and really make sure you hit the finish line and be relentless to, the focus. If you think about your legacy, what do you want One and Fun to represent in the home improvement world?
I want to be, for One and Fund, I wanted to be known as the disruptor, not so much as this is what we did for the industry, but I want to be the disruptor for the lenders, right? Because, like I mentioned earlier, those lenders have had so much power in this space, and they've dictated how you run your business to you have to do it like this. So I want to be known as a company that made that playing field even, lean more towards a contractor, but then also be the first person to build something that actually works in this space and not have it be a janky system.
I don't know if it's even fiduciary, the responsibility, if you could do this, but have you ever thought about running a client, maybe at a 590, give them a free credit repair type and just say, look, in 6 months I don't know if that's legal. I know it's not legal for the finance company to offer that, but what if you were able to get them up to a 650 work out, you say, listen, we've got this program. It's super affordable. We're going to split the cost with you. As long as you sign when you hit this level, then we'll go ahead with we're going to help you get this, and it's going to make your credit better.
Yeah, I've been wanting to do that, even go back to my Tundra Land days. And I've explored it more than I probably should have. So we are developing a program we have for a while, to have that, and we can do that, especially since we get that data. So, the whole goal behind that is you want to make sure that, keep that customer in your database, keep the touch point, the email blast, make sure you keep them engaged. And then whatever it costs that customer, whether it's, $500, $600, you can even give that as a discount to their project once they build their credit up and then get approved. So it's a great idea. The challenge with that is what I found, because I've tested out with a couple different companies, is those programs they cost that consumer money, right? So typically the people that need that, they don't have an extra $40, $50, so I think finding that sweet spot of something that's affordable for them, and are they going to actually because there's two ways to do it as far as the credit repair. It's like a DIY, or you're going to give them, okay, you need to send this letter, send this letter, send this letter out to get that removed from your credit. So you need to rely on them to actually do it. Or if you're going to have somebody do that for them, it's going to cost them even more money to do it.
If you could get it to where they can get to a 650 plus, you could, if the credit repair company was willing to take the payment later. I don't know if they're, it's something I've thought a lot about. I thought a lot about it more from my technician and CSR dispatch, the A1 crew, because I want them to have great credit. So I think about things of how to make their lives better. It doesn't mean I want them to go out and get a bunch of Harley Davidsons and new boats, but great credit is something that everybody should be serious about getting.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it makes your life easier if you have great credit. The other complexity with that is how is that sales rep bringing it up if it's at the point of sale, or how is your CSR team talking about it with the consumer? It can be an uncomfortable conversation, right? Be like, oh, you have terrible credit, but hey, I have this great. I mean, there's easy ways to wordsmith that, but there is a fine line on how to actually have that conversation.
Yeah, it's something I want to look into more. I want to talk to you offline about that. What's one piece of advice you would give to a young entrepreneur who is just starting out in the home service, home improvement space?
Yeah, I think it's okay to fail. I think I think a lot of people, when they start something, they think it has to be perfect and everything has to go right. And it's not. It's never going to be perfect. It never will be perfect. Are you going to learn from those mistakes to make you a better entrepreneur? That would be number one. The other thing is, not every idea is a good idea. I think we've all learned that the hard way.
I played this video at Garage Door Freedom of Jeff Bezos. He said, in the early days of Amazon, I hired some really smart people. And he goes, one of my chief of staff, the guy that we were working with, was actually like one of the best consultants I had ever worked with. And I got very fortunate to be able to bring these people on in the early days. And he said, 30 minutes. And Jeff Bezos said, 30 minutes with me in front of a whiteboard, I could put down 150 ideas. And the gentleman, the chief of staff, told Jeff Bezos, you could single-handedly destroy this company in a matter of 30 minutes in front of a whiteboard. He goes, so here's the deal, Jeff. The company is not at the size to be able to handle your ideas. So you need to keep those to yourself and prioritize them and release them as the company grows, and we've got the staff to accomplish those. So he said, keep the ideas to yourself, time release them as you see the importance, but you're prioritizing them. And your goal should be to build a company eventually that can handle all of your ideas. And he said, without that advice early on, I would have, because there's a million things they were trying to do, but they needed to build the company to be able to handle that many projects and get them to the finish line. They tried to get into the home service space twice, Amazon. Both times they failed. I beta tested both of them. And they thought they had it all figured out. They thought it was just going to commoditize, but all labor isn't created equal. I mean, when you show up with a new truck with the right tools, with guys that are really trained and background checked, the problem is these software guys, they think they can commoditize the home service space. And maybe one day somebody will figure it out, but there's still too much human interaction involved.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I mean, I've been toying with how to create that online experience, right? And part of what I'm super excited about with our merger with OneClick is to have those tools, be able to create the estimates very easily, right? I'm thinking of the generations that are coming up that don't own those houses yet. I mean, they grew up with a phone in their face or a TV, like all this different technology. They don't want to have 3 companies out and pitch them for 9 hours to move forward with this project, right? They want to have fill out a form, know what they want, pick their product, maybe pick between a list of contractors and just be like, I want that one. They have good reviews, sign contract. Here I go. Have the funding all right there. So I think it's going to get there at some point. I think we're still 5-ish years out, maybe even 10 years out. I know a lot of people are trying to chase that, me included. So
I was going to ask you what the changes that you are predicting over the next 3 to 5 years in the space. That's one of them, obviously.
Yeah, that's definitely one of them. I think the consolidation for sure, right? And that's on both sides of it. Whether you're, I think there's gonna be some large groups, just like Renovo, unfortunately, that I don't think they're alone. I'm friends with a lot of people who have worked for those companies, and they were a refinance away from going on to business themselves, right? So I think so opportunity is probably the best way to put that. So if you are a newer, smaller company, get your systems right, get them tight. I mean, there's going to be massive opportunity in front of all these companies, and if you don't have the systems in play, you're going to stay where you are and maybe even go out of business.
I want to jump back to one more thing. So you said you like TV, you like getting ingrained in the events, especially local events where there's probably not a lot of competition. Could be even a high school football game. What other things in marketing do you feel like isn't something that people are thinking about?
Here's a good one. If you become friends with a porta potty company, because if you see a bunch of porta potties being rented and brought somewhere, that means there's going to be a lot of people there. So that's a way to think outside the box and be like, okay, maybe there's a festival I don't know about, or maybe there's an event that I haven't heard about. But if you see where those porta potties are going, there's going to be people there.
Oh, I love that. It's like, that's really smart, actually. I was in we went to a sports bar to watch. It was game 6 at the baseball, the World Series. And I went to the bathroom and they had these things where there was advertising, the monitors. And I'm like, I wonder how these do. I mean, you're taking a whiz and you're looking at it. It's not, I never called anybody from that, but it's great for impressions. I guess it's the omni approach of being everywhere. I thought, what I thought about at the sports bar at Topgolf is like, that might be better to have an ad for recruiting, but it's also an impression for the company.
Yeah, definitely.
I just told my COO the number one thing I'm focused on is talent. I said, a great technician, a great installer. They show up on time. They got a smile. They recruit for you. They do self-promotions. They're posting on social media. They definitely have their KPIs dialed in. They don't turn over. Hopefully they plan on being here a long time. And if we did better, I was at NASCAR yesterday, and there was a military recruit. It was a lot of military people there, and I'm like, we should hire a military recruiter, like somebody that knows how to find winners. And they've done it so long they could identify the people that are going to be here for a long time. They know the questions to ask and if they're actually going to follow through. But that's where I think.
Well,
go ahead.
I was saying, and they know how to follow a process, which is important.
Yeah. I mean, we got this new recruiter. Her name's Sophie, and she has just changed the output of the talent we're getting. And she's using AI and A/B testing, and she hired 3 recruiters. And I think that's probably the most important thing if you're going to grow a business is finding winners, taking great people and making them phenomenal.
Yeah, definitely.
I used to
100%.
think, hey, I could take an average guy and make him great. And then I'm like, that takes a long time. So is there any books that really changed the way you look at business over the years? I mean, you said you read Rodney Webb's. You mentioned a gal, what is it, Renee
Brown.
Renee Brown. Is there any books that you're like, this is a must read if you're going to be successful, other than the E-Myth and like?
No, 100%. I think there's 2 books that really changed the way I've done business. The first one is The Go-Giver. It's one of my favorite books. Yeah. I think I read that once a year just to like refresh my brain. Right. And I think the other one is Art of War. I do the same with that one. I think I pick up something every time I reread The Art of War. So
that's great. 2 great books. I think, The Art of War just explains patience and just being able to weather the storm and how to infiltrate kind of your competition and how to outlast. There's a lot of lessons in that book.
Yeah, I think my favorite quote from Art of War is that, like, in the midst of chaos, there's always opportunity, right? So, because there's always chaos. So I think I have that on my screensaver on my computer. So
I love it. If somebody wants to reach out to you, Justin, what's the best way to do that?
I think the easiest way to be our website. So oneclickcontractor.com. and it's just ONE, so oneclickcontractor.com.
Who is
And
the
then,
best? Go ahead. Where else?
I was saying, if I'm personally on Facebook or LinkedIn. Feel free to message me there. So
Okay. And then is there anybody that like stands out that you've worked with, just like world renowned? I mean, obviously Brian Gottlieb, I think, is one of a kind. He is just, he's the hammer. um, but is there any other, operators / founders that you're just obsessed with, like as far as the way they lead?
I think, I'm very blessed and fortunate to work with a lot of them. I'm going to say Michael Hoy has been, a good friend and a mentor of mine too, with the CEO of Great Day Improvements. So watching him grow basically from a bankrupt company in 2014 to a 1.6 billion or 1.8 billion dollar company today, and how he's navigated buying all these businesses and merging them under one platform. I'd say I've loved hearing his story and just being a friend and a mentor to me.
That's fantastic. We talked a lot, so many things, and I love the emphasis on marketing and finance. Maybe we didn't talk about something. I'm going to let you close us out and just whatever you feel like the audience needs to hear.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It goes back to, kind of something I mentioned is, have a process, be open to listening to change. Sometimes change can be scary in your business. But change can also be really good for your business. And, if you're not financing 40 to 50% of your projects, that's fine. There's processes out there we can help you out with to do that to your business, because you're going to see higher tickets, better close ratios, and it's going to make you more profitable as a business, which will lead to employee retention. It's going to lead to more marketing, more customers. It's a really great cycle to be on. So implement it in your business today. That's what I'd say.
I love it. Justin, thank you so much for taking the time today.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me, Tommy.
Great work.